What's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson, joined by my co host, Collin Alcaves. Tony's out of town at a Scissor concert. I'm sure he'll have a great time. But me and Collin are here to discuss some New York Rangers news. The rookie camp has concluded. Training camp begins today with a couple of off ice sessions. And throughout the next week or so, the Rangers are going to be gearing up, ready to head into preseason, which starts in 6 days, and then making their way to opening night. Now, the Rangers are a pretty good team, as we all know. A lot of those guys they have locked up in their spots, but the Rangers do have a couple of prospects that have performed pretty well throughout this offseason and have been slowly working their way up to the Rangers. And the question is at hand right now, are any of them going to have the opportunity to play in opening night or at any point throughout the season so far? But before we really get into things, Collin, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Another day closer to Rangers hockey. Can't get enough, man. 6 days. I know I'm going to a couple of the preseason games. It's got me giddy.
Of course, I'm feeling pretty giddy too. But right, heading into things, you look at the offense that the Rangers have right now. They have a pretty solid core, and there really isn't that much open room for anyone to come in. Lafreniere was just announced today. He's going to be getting some looks at on the right wing throughout training camp because the left wing, you got Chris Kreider, you got Panarin. There's really nowhere for him to move up. Now, one of the Rangers' top prospects, Brennan Othman, right? We've discussed him a lot on this channel. But him growing soon to be on the Rangers, it could have happened last year. It might happen this year. But if that's going to happen, Othman is also a natural left winger. He's probably going to have to make some transitioning over to the right as well. So I'm curious on your thoughts on how you think he'd fit in on the Rangers. How would he even make a showing on the opening night roster?
So the first things first, he'd have to switch to the right side, similar to what Lafreniere has to do. That left wing is stacked. I mean, we're pretty deep on all facets of the ice, but the right wing could use a little bit of help, and I think making the switch gives him the best chance. But me personally, I don't think he makes it this year. I think the signing of Blake Wheeler kind of says that. I think they're trying to give Othman one more year in the minors before they give him a shot to be an NHL regular, and they elevate whoever's on that third line onto the second, perhaps, and give him a little bit of third line time just to get acclimated to that NHL level of game. But I unfortunately don't think he'll make the team out of camp.
Yeah, I mean, I know positioning is definitely a huge factor. There's really not a lot of room for him right there, but let's just talk like overall terms of development. I would say, in my personal opinion, Othman is the Rangers' second best prospect, definitely the most developed. I think Gabriel Perreault is number one, but he's still young, fresh out of the draft, 18 years old. We're not going to be seeing him for a while he's over at Boston College, but Othman's had a couple of years to develop. Last season, he scored 67 points in 56 games, split between the Firebirds and the Petes over in the OHL. So, let's just say in a world where the Rangers do have an open spot over there on the left wing, do you think Othman is even ready at this point? Because the Rangers do have a reputation of being somewhat controversial with developing prospects. There have been a lot of big names who are supposed to be stars that never panned out. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that he could contribute easily. I think he's a very offensive minded player, and his skill set it's better than most coming into the league, in my opinion, for where he was drafted, and he's had that time to develop. But I mean, you look at the 67 points he had last year. 29 of them were goals, split between two teams. He went from a leader on the Firebirds. He got traded over to the Petes, and it was a completely different team. He didn't know anybody over there. He was lighting it up with familiar faces. So to switch mid-season, as we saw with Patrick Kane, can't always be the easiest. Sometimes you don't always get acclimated. He seemed to slide in there seamlessly and do a good job. And I'd like to think that he could do the same on the Rangers. Am I saying he's going to come over and put up 67 points in 56 games? Hell no. But I could see him easily putting up 30 to 40 points in his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty solid stat line right there. And I know Brendan Othman, he is going to be with the Hartford Wolfpack to start off the season, most likely, unless he does have an incredible training camp in preseason and basically forces the Rangers to give him some NHL time. But it is nice to see him over here with within the Rangers system. Last year there was a little bit of confusion with some specific rules where regarding Othman's age, had the Rangers brought him over to play within the organization, he would have been trapped up on the Rangers. So if he ended up not being ready, was playing very poorly, they couldn't even have sent him down to the AHL, which is why he had to wait till this year. But it'll be nice to see him with Hartford or the Rangers if he plays well, because that'll really hopefully get things going, playing in the top league you can before making your way to the NHL. But outside of the offense, because I personally think Othman is really the only one who has a chance right now, besides Cooley. I think Cooley is another top prospect. But let's look at the defense, right? You have a couple of names out there who are trying to work their way onto that final spot. Braden Schneider on the third defensive pairing. He's had like a rotating door of partners right there. Just the guys coming in, going, nothing's really worked. And, you have guys like Zach Jones who are really young, technically not considered a prospect anymore because he's played in a handful of games. But either Jones, he's a possibility. You have another young name with Matthew Robertson, who he has a lot to prove this upcoming season on the final year of his entry-level contract. So we'll just start off with Zach Jones. There's a couple of like veteran defensemen like Eric Gustafson who are really going to create an intense level of competition. So that spot next to Schneider, do you think that's just a lock for Gustafson, or do you think Jones could just fight his way in there?
I'd say given Laviolette's love, I'd go as far to say for Gustafson, he spoke very highly of Gustafson last season. In an article on Empire Sports Media, actually, there was a direct quote saying that when Gustafson came up to fill in for the injured Dmitry Orlov, he more than exceeded expectations and ended up taking over power play time on the second unit, and he stepped into a much larger role after the injury to Orlov and then him getting traded down the line. I think that they like him a lot. So I think it's going to be hard for Zach Jones, who in my opinion is a little undersized and his skating lacks. I think it's going to be hard for him to unseed Eric Gustafson from that third pairing.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. I think there's going to be a pretty intense level of competition heading into training camp. So we're going to be keeping a very close eye on that as well, But Matthew Robertson, he's another defensive prospect within the Rangers system that he's had a little bit of a hard time developing. He hasn't looked as well as the Rangers would have liked. He performed all right last season with the Wolfpack, but then unfortunately, he had a season-ending injury that kept him out of the playoffs. So hopefully heading into this upcoming season, like I mentioned earlier, he is on the last year of his entry-level contract. So he has a little bit of stuff to prove to the Rangers, if they want to keep him around and keep trying to develop him a little bit. But throughout the rookie tournament, he had a goal and 2 assists, given the goal was an empty netter. But it's always nice to see him score and just get on the score sheet. It helps with the confidence and everything. So, what are your expectations out of Robertson? Do you think he even has a chance of fighting his way into the roster, not just opening night, but at any point throughout the season? Or is it pretty much just straight AHL for him this year?
I'll say similar to my opinion on Othman. I think he also, barring some either injuries or incredible play where they can't do anything but bring him up, like if he forces the Rangers to bring him up, I think that he will most likely play in the AHL as well. He's a good prospect. He was a steal in the draft that we got him. He was developing well. He slipped a little bit here and there, but in my opinion, he's still a very good prospect, solid in his own zone. His offensive stats have fallen off a little bit, but I think another full season in the AHL will give him just what he needs to get his confidence back, really round out his game, and maybe take that next step down the line.
Yeah, and before we wrap things up, just one more name I want to talk about. I definitely don't think it's a possibility for opening night, but just at any point in the season, Dylan Garand, a pretty good goaltending prospect. He really looked well throughout rookie camp, and he'll probably get a little bit more time throughout training camp and preseason to really show what he's got. But obviously, the Rangers have just recently signed Jonathan Quick to a 1-year deal. But you look at Quick's stats throughout the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a heavy, steep decline. And I know a large part of that did come from injuries. It came from moving around from a team that he played almost like his entire career with, just new faces, new environment. So those were all definitely determining factors. Hopefully he'll be able to fit in well with the Rangers. But if Quick starts to go downhill quickly, do you think we can see Garand get some playing time behind Igor Shesterkin at all?
I don't think it's impossible, but the Rangers have never been one to rush goalies. I think they always typically tend to take their time with the goalies. And so I think that is, again, what happens. I think he's very good, very talented. The sky's the limit, but I think they're good. He's still a bit raw, and I think they're trying to ease him into a full workload down in Hartford before they start giving him NHL minutes. So I think that he'll also remain, even if he plays fantastic. I think you don't go out there and you sign a guy like Jonathan Quick if you were planning on bringing this kid up. But who knows? They might not have expected him to play as well as he did in the rookie camp, and maybe he'll surprise us all in the preseason. So I mean, it's not impossible, but I'd find it hard to see them bury Quick, who they brought in to be a mentor for Shesterkin, and I don't think they're looking for Shesterkin to be a mentor to Dylan Garand just quite yet.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I would have to say I agree. It's like one of those things, which is where Quick is old. It's a 1-year contract. So I'm just a little curious to see how Garan's going to perform this year. I'll definitely keep an eye on him down in the AHL as well. And I think like the overall just consensus with when it comes to the Rangers is their prospect pool is actually pretty good. It's not as like bountiful as it was a few years ago with like big names making it to the NHL already. But I think the Rangers prospect pool is extremely underrated. The problem is just that their NHL roster is so stacked. It's going to be really difficult to get any of these guys up there right now. But just there's like last question, like of all the names that we've discussed, Othman, Robertson, Jones, Garand, who do you think has like the highest chance of really impressing the Rangers enough to the point where they just slap them on that opening night roster?
I'll say, call me crazy. It's a name that you mentioned very briefly. It's for me, it's Cooley. I think
Really?
Cooley has a real shot at making it on that third line, especially if they look to move on from Barclay Goodrow's deal. You can see him slotting in that bottom six. He's a grinder. He's physical. He's not afraid to get in those nitty gritty, dirty areas, and he fights for his life down there. But he does a great job. He's exactly the type of player you need in the bottom six. And I think that our bottom six isn't lacking, but it could use a little youth and a little depth. And especially, like I said, if they're looking to move on from Goudreau's bloated contract, he could be an easy guy, either him or Johnny Brodzinski, but Brodzinski isn't a prospect. But I could see Cooley making it out of camp for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be unprecedented. Cooley has played a couple of games with the Rangers. So, like, if there's an injury or something and someone needs to get called up, don't be surprised if it is him. I personally, like, I'm a big Othman fan, as many fans will know. Me and Tony talk about him a lot. So, I'm just going to believe in the underdog and say that he's going to have a really good training camp. He's going to really show the Rangers what he's made of throughout preseason. And then maybe, just maybe, if he can play on the right wing, we might get to see him there on opening night. But that pretty much just wraps up today's video discussing all of these prospects, me and Collin here. But make sure you comment below, who do you think has the highest chance of making the opening night roster? Are any of them even going to make it, or are the Rangers just too good to let any kids have some playing time? But we'll be sure to fill you in with all news as we head into training camp in the preseason, as we work our way towards opening night. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a notification. Have a good one, and
Let's
let's
go
go
Rangers.
Rangers.